Hello everyone. Welcome to this year's debate for the community officer. I will be your host today. My name is Lucy. I'm the head of student media. So hopefully I'm prepared to host this. If we just want to start with both the candidates introducing themselves, just really simple introduction. It's not time for you to pitch yourselves just yet.
Hi guys, my name is Tash. I'm a final year psychology student. I'm running to be your next community officer.
Hi everyone, my name is Tanisha. I'm also a final year psychology student. I'm an international student and I'm also running to be your community officer.
Cool. So just to quickly run everyone through the format of this debate. So I will begin by asking a question. Obviously we'll go Tash first and then Danishka, and then for the next question we'll switch. We each then have 1 minute to respond to this question. After this, either of you can put a challenge or a question to the other candidate. Just want to add, I might also put some challenges or questions in, just to try and keep it interesting for everyone watching. Once you've been challenged, you then have 30 seconds to make a rebuttal or respond to this question, after which the next person will get the opportunity to answer the question. If at any point you want me to repeat the question or you want me to say it again but in a different way, just let me know, and that's fine. Obviously this format will just then repeat until the hour is over, and then we'll finish with some closing statements. All good? Okay. For the first question, and we'll start going in pretty seriously. In terms of your manifestos, I gave you both a read. You both mentioned buses. However, your stance on buses differ quite a lot. Danishka, you're looking at bringing down the costs of buses, whereas Tash, you're looking at increasing the frequency. With more frequency from First Bus will probably come higher prices. So how can you justify either better frequency with higher costs or lower frequency bringing lower costs? Tash, would you like to begin?
So my stance on the buses wasn't necessarily frequency, it was just changes to the timings. I think past SU community officer SU community officers have shown that they can't change the price of First Bus. It's a private company, but they've shown through the introduction of the U4 and U3 this year that you can change the timetables and the bus routes, which is my main focus in my manifesto. So, yeah.
So not increasing the frequency, but changing.
Yeah, just changing the timetables to make it more convenient for sport training times. Because at the moment you can either arrive 40 minutes early to a 7:30 a.m. training, which is the sort of standard sport training time, or you can arrive 15 minutes late. And as a footballer, I know that on Bucks you get fined money for being late to training, so that's not ideal. And then the U4 stopping after 7 p.m. is also an issue because you're stuck on campus after club nights, or if you have a late night lecture, sometimes you can miss that if it's full. So I think that's my priority rather than increased frequency necessarily.
Danishka, do you have any challenges to that?
I did have one question. So with adjusting the timetables to accommodate for earlier things and later things, how do you feel this would affect buses during peak times?
I don't think it would, because it only requires one bus in the morning, and say you might not be able to have buses running consistently after 7 on campus, but say, a lot of people go to school, a lot of people live in Southdown, Odddown, the sort of area that is only covered by the U4, and the only way to get home is by paying really expensive Uber. So having sort of one bus, a U4 at night on campus event days would be very helpful.
Thank you. Okay. Danishka, your time.
Thank you for the question. I think to clarify, I am aware that it's quite difficult to lower the costs, especially with the cost of living crisis increasing the pressures of prices. And as you mentioned, First Bus is a private company. My solution or workaround for that was to work closely with First Bus, as community officers have been doing, to try and come up with offers for students, such as the birthday month free bus pass, as well as at least protecting prices. So even if we can't reduce them much, let them not inflate at crazy rates. Another workaround I wanted to look at was boosting alternative travel options. For example, walking buses, if that's a safer option for walking at night, or bicycles, if that's a possibility. However, I do also think that buses, at least slightly more frequent over the weekends or in off-peak hours, is going to be quite helpful and can make activities a lot more accessible. As I've heard a lot of students stop themselves from going to activities because of the buses. I think my priority, rather than reducing prices, is to protect prices where they are and try to find offers and other workarounds to mitigate the high costs.
Thank you. Do you have, Tash, any challenges or questions to that?
So you said in terms of offers, you mentioned the birthday bus pass, which is already in place. Do you have any others, or are you just looking at it from a sort of stance of protecting that offer?
Protecting that offer and coming up with additional ones to that. So a specific idea could be a holiday-based one, because the holidays are already a more expensive period in students' lives. And so coming up with some sort of application to get a bus pass for the month or a merit-based award, it would be great to survey students to see what is more welcomed.
Thank you both. Okay, for the next question, I'll start with you, Danishta. This role covers a wide range of issues, from well-being and safety to housing and cost of living. How would you prioritise competing student concerns whilst ensuring that no communities are left behind?
I think it's really crucial to get as many voices as possible. With the experience that I've had in the SU, I have an idea of the student needs from various areas of the SU and have spoken to a lot of students from typically underrepresented backgrounds. And so I have a lot of practice keeping those concerns in mind. But I also am aware that I can't know everything. And so I always try to take a people-first approach, where I try to get an understanding of what people need with the situation, what will actually help, rather than just doing something that sounds nice, but maybe is either marginalizing someone or isn't actually addressing the root problem. I also want to be able to create more direct routes to contact different parts of the SU, either through community officer or directly, so that students can talk to the different areas of the SU. For example, if it's campus infrastructure, or if it's complaints and disciplinary, or if it's the volunteering activities, to be able to talk to them about their problems in a mediated way and directly address what's going on and what needs to happen.
Thank you. Do you have any questions to that, Tash? No? Okay. Would you like me to repeat the question, or are you happy? Okay, so this role covers a wide range of issues, from well-being and safety to housing and cost of living. How would you prioritise competing student concerns whilst ensuring that no communities are left behind?
Okay, so the reason that I wanted to apply for community officer was because of the broadness of the role. It's very exciting to me, and I think it's reflected in my manifesto with a very broad range of points and areas to focus on. That obviously you need to prioritise the most important things, but I think, so like affordability is very important at the moment. I spoke to a lot of students when I was writing my manifesto, and I asked them, what do you think could improve the community? And nearly all of them said affordability of food, and housing, and everything to do with that. So I think it's not necessarily competing, but trying to focus on a range of what needs to happen.
Danishta, do you have any questions to that? Okay, for the next question, starting with you, Tash, have you read Danishta's manifesto? If so, what is something that you might like to take from their manifesto and try to implement?
I have actually. I had a reread when I heard that question to the education officers. I think I really like the points about sustainability, I think trying to hold the university accountable to its climate goals. I've just done a project on it in psychology for sustainability. Is very important. I think it is underperforming those goals, and trying to have open communication with them about that is very important. So I'd probably nick that.
Any questions to that?
Just out of curiosity, what groups in the university and the SU would you maybe prioritize working with in order to hold the university accountable for sustainability goals?
I mean, there's the university sustainability team, and obviously there's sort of a academic focus on trying to make sort of sustainability part of our education. So I think, even though that's a goal, I've noticed in a lot of modules and a lot of courses, there actually isn't very much on sustainability. So I think things like that are very important. And working with Green Impact as well, that's what we did our project on. It's a staff sustainability initiative, which could be applied to students if they voluntarily wanted to participate, but it's currently not properly open. So,
And sorry, Tash, but I do also have a follow-up. So obviously you've spoken a lot about affordability, now you've just brought in the points about sustainability. If there was a new sustainability policy that was to come in and you had to vote on it, but perhaps it would increase costs on campus, which would you prioritise?
I mean, it depends on the policy really, because it depends the extent that it's actually helping. I mean, a lot of sustainable materials are more expensive. I mean, I've got my reusable Tupperware policy, which is sort of A, would cut costs, and B, would sort of, it's more sustainable because you're not wasting plastic or cardboard or anything like that. So I think at the end of the day, you just have to weigh it up based on the benefits of affordability and the benefits of what it's doing for the environment and see what happens.
Thank you. So now to Tanisha, same question.
I think my favorite thing from your manifesto was the idea of Shag Week. Because one thing I was thinking about is boosting engagement with the Never Okay campaign and broadening it so that I know there's already been work in the past years to broaden it and include harassment against any minority groups as well as sexual harassment. And I think building on that and making it more accessible, more attractive for students to engage with, and making sure that they don't just do it for the sake of completing it, but they genuinely engage with it and advocate for it going forward. The idea of students holding each other accountable when they see something, being a bystander. I think that's an amazing thing. And Shag Week, I love that idea because I read that and I thought that would be such a great way to get students to engage with it in a way that's fun for them as well. And I know that Student Support Office, the Student Advice and Support Office hands out free condoms and sexual products that you can use for safe sex. And so having that as a campus-wide initiative would be amazing and it would be so engaging.
Thank you. Do you have any questions or challenges to that, Tash? Okay. Let's move on to the next question. So I'll start with you this time, Tanisha. It's easy for you to represent the students who are already loud and active in the SU, but how will you ensure that you are hearing the voices of the invisible students? By those, I mean the students who are coming to uni, going to lectures and going home, not necessarily getting in touch with the SU directly.
That's a really good question. And I will cheat a little bit, and I heard in the previous education officer debate, someone said more anonymized surveys, and I do think that's a very good idea. But then there's also the point about getting those surveys out and making sure they're reaching students who may not be engaging with the extra things past their lectures. I think with especially initiatives that we're prioritizing, it would be great to use the lecture space, not infringing on classes, but just use that lecture space to put out maybe a bulletin board with everything going on that students can get involved with and have their say in. I think that would really boost engagement in things like online unit evaluations, but also with SU officer voting, because we're always looking to increase voter rates. So having that sort of bulletin board, either in classes or in more visible spaces on campus, might catch more students' eyes and encourage them to get involved. I also think another thing that encourages students to get involved is to know that they are being heard. And so throughout my role in the SU, if I am to have it, I would love to build on that tone of saying that students' issues are being heard, they are being acknowledged, and keeping them posted on what's going on with them. Because if they know that action is being taken, it will evoke more trust that they are being heard.
Thank you. Ash, do you have any questions to that?
My one question is, I think you probably have seen this, but I think a lot of people are quite sick of being bombarded with lots and lots and lots of surveys from the SU, the university, from their course. How would you actually try and improve the uptake and sort of make people less annoyed that they're sort of getting surveys pushed at them left, right and centre?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'm an academic rep, and so I have to survey students a lot, and I definitely feel quite guilty about that. I think centralizing it is quite helpful. It would be interesting to look. I don't have a concrete idea on how to do this, but I would love to see some sort of centralized survey space so that we can make sure that there's not repetitive surveys or any surveys that have already been done that other groups can use the responses from. So again, building that connectivity between different stakeholders, different groups across the university and the SU can really help with that. For example, if the careers team or if the climate team already did a survey and then people in planet can use that survey, that would be really helpful.
So it's easy to represent the students who are already loud and active in the SU, but how will you ensure that you are hearing the voices of the invisible students, those who just go to lectures and go home?
So I think an idea for this is sort of inspired by the housing visits that Benji and Izzy have been doing recently. Sort of every few months they'll go and they'll talk to students in town about their housing issues, etc. And I think that could be extended, not regularly, because you don't really want to annoy people all the time by coming to their house, but sort of every few months going around Oldfield or going around the comms on campus and just trying to have a word with people who otherwise sort of might just not partake in life on campus. So I think that would be my way of doing that.
Thank you. Do you have any questions to that, Alicia? Okay, on to the next question. With the new renters' rights legislation coming this spring, how will you ensure that every student understands their new rights regarding no-fault evictions and maintenance standards before they sign their new contracts? Tash, starting with you.
Okay, so a big part of my manifesto was improvements to housing support and help. And I think part of that should be having more accessible and sort of signposted guidance that's very easy for the normal student to understand, the sort of policies and stuff. And I think pushing it out on SU media and sort of even through the university media, because it's a very important topic for people to understand. I personally have had a very bad experience with my landlord this year, so that's part of my priorities, and I've had a lot of other students that have. So just really pushing out very easy to understand sort of versions of that policy.
Any questions to that, Alicia? Okay. Would you like to answer? Would you like me to repeat the question?
That would be great, thank you.
So with the new renters' rights legislation coming this spring, how will you ensure that every student understands their new rights regarding no-fault evictions and maintenance standards before they sign their new contracts?
I think capitalizing on the timing as well as the resources that are already in place will be quite helpful to reach students. Because when students are looking for housing, they're going to go to the student accommodation centers and they're going to go to any platforms that allow them to find housing. So using student accommodations platform, their media and their email blasts, as well as, I like your idea, if I can piggyback, using the SU marketing. Another thing is timing, as I mentioned. So not putting it too early in the year so that it goes over students' heads if they haven't started thinking about it, but having the information at least available for those early birds, and then really pushing on that publicity around mid-October, late October, when students start looking for housing and start buying flatmates. Another important thing is putting it up in student accommodations so that while the students are thinking about where to find housing, they often look at the bulletin boards in their kitchen. And so I think that would be a helpful place to go.
Okay, thank you. Any questions to that, Tash? Okay. For the next question, how would you balance responding to urgent welfare or safety issues whilst delivering longer term change through manifesto pledges and the SU Top 10? Tanisha, starting with you.
I think there's two really important things to do when you have a role of responsibility. One is to act on those urgent welfare needs. Say if there's any issue that comes up or a suggestion from a student or student group, acting on that and delivering as much as possible. But the second thing is to establish a system where students can continue to take power into their own hands and bring those changes about. Not only will that allow you to perpetuate the fact that changes can be made and improvements are continuous, but it can also allow students to inform the decisions that are made in the SU, and so that we know that needs are directly being met. So I want to create accessible, easy, clear, direct forms to report any issues, as I've talked about in my manifesto and before, that allow students to directly talk to someone in the SU about any issues that they're facing, or that representatives talk about issues that groups are facing, and see what we can do to work together on this. And I think creating that environment will allow changes to not only be done while I'm in this role or Tash is in this role, but also to continue going forward.
Thank you. Do you have any questions or challenges to that, Tash? Sure. But if we just wait on Tanisha, do you have any questions for Tanisha? I just wanted to ask, with your forms that you are planning to implement, do you think that A, enough students would use them, and B, that the SU has enough power?
That's a very good question about power. And I think, again, piggybacking on the structures that already exist is what will help me to navigate that. Because I've thought about this a lot. It's all well and good to have all these forms, but who's going to oversee them? So I see that there are some forms on the website already, but they don't go exactly where they need to, for example, for any accessibility issues. And so I think it's important to use the SU website, because even if not every student will use them, at least the forms are there. And setting that up should not take too much. As for actually following through on these, I think it's just a matter of connecting the bodies in the university already. Say a student reports an issue that revolves around accessibility. Making sure that there's proper communication between the management of the building where that accessibility issue is and the accessibility team of the campus and student groups such as DAG, things like that. So it's more about boosting connectivity, and I think that will make it easier rather than more resource intensive.
And Tash, I'll repeat the question. So how would you balance responding to urgent welfare or safety issues with delivering longer term change through manifesto pledges and the SU Top 10?
So I think obviously it's very important to respond to urgent points on like as they happen. You sort of can't control that. But I also think you're not going to be in a situation where you're constantly hit, I hope not, constantly hit by urgent matters day in, day out. So I think it's about finding a good balance of being able to work on my manifesto pledges versus addressing urgent matters. It's all time management, isn't it?
Okay, thank you. Tanisha, do you have any questions to that? Okay, for the next question. In striving to make campus a welcoming place for most students, do you believe in students having a right to associate, even if it is around unwelcoming causes such as Turning Point UK or Reform UK? Tash, I'll begin with you.
I think although sort of Reform UK doesn't personally align with my beliefs, as an SU, you do have a duty to allow student groups to express their political opinions and ideology as long as it's not harmful and it doesn't break any of the sort of inclusivity and rules about sort of being respectful to other groups. So you sort of have to let it happen because it's your duty.
Tanisha, do you have any questions following that? Thank you. I would just ask, at what point would you feel is correct to intervene?
I think at any point where very sort of nasty viewpoints being expressed to other students, or a string of instances happen between a certain society and certain other groups, I think at that point it would be right to intervene. It would obviously be something that the SU would have to be keeping a close eye on, that sort of society, so monitoring really.
Okay. Tanisha, do you want me to repeat, or are you happy? Yes. So, in striving to make campus a welcoming place for students, do you believe in students having a right to associate, even if it is around unwelcoming causes such as Turning Point UK or Reform UK?
There's this quote that I think is quite valuable to remember, that if you do not believe in free speech for someone who believes differently to you, you do not believe in free speech at all. And so I do believe that students have the right to associate with their beliefs, even if I don't personally agree with it. But of course, this is within reason. And I think I'm going to say something quite similar to Tash, which is that it cannot infringe on the rights of speech for others, and it cannot be hateful. And I think to ensure that, it needs to be clearer what the policies at the university and the SU are on hate speech and on inclusivity. It also needs to be made clearer what groups we are focused on safeguarding. Of course, the SU has a responsibility to safeguard all its students, and I think it is very important to especially protect students who might be facing extra harassment or extra aggression in the current political climate. So keeping that in mind and working with student groups to make sure that those boundaries are nice and clear and set will make sure that students can express their opinions without infringing on those of others and without creating any harm.
Any follow-ups to that question? So, starting with Tanisha this time, when representing students on committees such as EDI, Accessibility and BWare, how would you turn discussion into tangible improvements for students?
I really like that question. I used to be on the Diversity and Support Exec, and that was a very valuable experience because you get to work with students from all the other diversity and support groups, such as Nightline, RIP, Student Minds, DAG, and sorry, they're not coming to mind right now. You get to work with other students from these groups. I think it's important to work with other groups, as I have been saying, but in order to take issues into actions, have it written down, have that clear agenda for committee meetings, follow it up, set a date together where we will say, we want to look into this issue a little bit longer. Okay, let's have that done by the end of the month. We want to action this. What steps are needed in order to get to that point? Writing down a list of actions for each student group or each individual or each SU or university party, and making sure that those are achieved, following those up. So having that organizational system and agenda is really helpful.
Ash, any questions to that?
So you spoke a lot about how you'd organise meetings, but sort of you didn't say how you could turn sort of the words from those meetings into reality. How would you go about doing that?
Thank you for clarifying. As I said, I think setting that list of actions and that timeline is really important. So it's all well and good to talk about issues that are that are happening on campus, but it's important that those actions are followed up on. So writing down exactly what needs to be done to get it done. I'll give you an example to be a bit more concrete. 2 years ago, we were looking at mold in housing in Bath, as I'm sure a lot of you have faced. And so what was needed in that situation was feedback from students. And I think it would be really helpful to make sure that the student group groups who were involved are following up with their members and make sure that they're engaging with what needs to be done in order to action the points.
Okay. Ash, would you like to repeat? So when representing students on committees such as EDI, Accessibility and Be Well, how would you turn discussion into tangible improvements for students?
So I think the most important thing is how you turn words into reality. I think the most important thing is where you take these points to, whether that's improving physical accessibility and using campus services to sort of do works, change lighting, etc. Depends what's brought up in meetings. Or sort of for mental health policies, anything like that, it should be brought to the correct group of people and then have discussions with them to actually bring things in. There's no point sort of talking about things and not having an actual plan of action for when they sort of need to be done.
Any questions to that?
Often you see when you bring things to the right groups of people that it can still get lost in discussion, and because some of them have meetings quite infrequently, say once a month, there's often not really substantial updates and actual action can get delayed by that. So how would you navigate that?
I think the important thing would be to follow up consistently on important policies or works. Sort of chasing by email, not too much because again that will really annoy people, but just making sure that things are happening and asking for updates on the progress and sort of trying to get a concrete timeline from people about when things can be done by.
Okay, Tash, starting with you for this next one. What is one thing about the current student experience in Bath that makes you genuinely angry? Why are you, specifically, out of both of you, the best person to fix it rather than Divish?
I think about the student experience in Bath, the main issue is affordability. I think a lot of people have been struggling, and I've noticed more people struggling from my first year to now, based on the rising prices and sort of the mismatch of that with the loans and accommodation prices. So I think that's very important. I think that I'm the person because I've made it very clear and very concrete in my manifesto exactly what steps I would do and take to reduce food prices, sort of across campus. And yeah, I think I have a very concrete plan laid out of sort of working with Lunchbox and the pantry, which is very important and is at risk of going sort of becoming undone. So I think trying to preserve those and work towards improving them is very important.
Thank you. Any challenges to that finish? And the same question to you.
Do you mind repeating it, please?
So, what is one thing about the current student experience in Bath that makes you genuinely angry, and why are you specifically the best person to fix it rather than Tash?
I think one thing that I feel quite passionately about is sustainability on campus. I see a lot of things are happening that the wider student body does not know about. I make that sound so dark. I just mean, I think transparency is quite important. For example, moving day. You see so many things left behind by each student that just go to waste. And I think it could help address waste on campus as well as costs if we could come up with some sort of sharing system for that. I think another thing related to sustainability is careers on campus. And I think it's really important that we can have the opportunity to use our degrees in a way that aligns with our personal beliefs, whatever those may be. And one thing that I think is lacking in terms of careers at the moment is sustainable and ethical careers on campus. Especially if you're studying, for example, a mechanical engineering degree or any other engineering degrees, there's fewer options for you to use that to leave a positive impact in the world, at least in the careers that brought to campus. So I think those are two things that I would want to address. And what makes me the right candidate for this is my experience in working with people in planet a little bit, more so this year, and working with the departmental team to come up with ways to encourage students to think about sustainability on placements, which is directly where you can apply green initiatives to the workplace. I have experience in working with various departments and keeping sustainability in mind in everything, as we need to be doing with the climate crisis. And I also think that it's important to think about how boosting sustainability and cutting costs can go hand in hand.
I'm sorry to ask you another question, but I would like to ask a similar question that I asked earlier to Tash, which is how do you balance sustainability with affordability?
I think that there are a lot of ways to boost sustainability while cutting day-to-day costs for students. So the sharing program that I mentioned earlier can help reduce wastage, as students won't be leaving behind things that will go to the bins or go to the landfills, and then students who are coming in can then take those things. I think, as a specific example, there used to be an initiative where there can be housing items, like kitchen items, that students left behind, and incoming students can then go get them for free. So that cuts costs and it reduces waste. So I think there's a lot of initiatives like this that we can look at to boost sustainability.
Do you have any questions on this point?
So I was in Green Park in my first year, and they do actually have a scheme like that, where at the end when you're moving out, people can leave sort of probably more valuable items, the ones they want to throw away, and collect them. So with that already sort of in existence, I don't know how wide it is, but it was definitely a thing at Green Park. What would you do?
I actually didn't know about that, so thank you. That's really great that we have a system to work from. I do know that on campus, as far as I know, it is less widespread because I have a friend who works with the campus cleaning team over the summer, and she's seen all the things that get thrown away, that are taken away, truckloads of them. And so taking that Green Park policy and implementing it, it just shows that the university has the resources to make this happen. I do know that space on campus is a bit limited, and I know that's something the current SU officers are looking to address. So working on that to see if there's a space on campus that we can use to store things, like the pantry, but for objects. Thank you.
Okay, I think we are coming up to our last question now. So, in the past, BAF students have protested over Vice-Chancellor pay and expenses. If the university were to announce a multi-million-pound campus beautification project while students are still using food banks in the SU, would you engage with students in their plans for a student protest, or would you try and negotiate behind closed doors? Which is more effective? Dinishta, to begin.
Could you repeat the question one more time so I have all the
Sure.
parts? Thank you.
Okay. In the past, BAF students have protested over Vice-Chancellor pay and expenses. If the university were to announce a multi-million-pound campus beautification project while students are still using food banks in the SU, would you engage and help students to organise a protest, or would you try and negotiate behind closed doors? Which is more effective?
Thank you for repeating that. I think every student has the right to respectfully protest. And we've talked about free speech before. The university and the SU have recently been working on clarifying those policies so that students are more aware of how they can protest with the correct permissions and without infringing on any other rights or without besmirching the name of the university or the SU. I think working with students and helping them to organize a protest and have their say and express their say is key, because if this beautification project goes against the needs of the students, the university and the SU need to know that in a way that doesn't compromise the integrity of the University of Bath. And I think that can only happen if, well, it can't only happen, it would help if the SU worked closely with those students who want to express their opinion.
Thank you. Any questions about that? Okay, I'd like to answer.
So I think as an SU officer, your priority is listening and representing the students at bar. As you said, everyone has the right to protest peacefully and respectfully, and I think that's something that, as an SU officer particularly, you should never try to stop. I think at the same time, the power of being an SU officer is that you are able to have conversations behind closed doors that do represent the students. So I think leveraging both would actually be the most effective instead of supporting just one.
Any questions for Dr. Nishta? This is quite broad, but how would you balance conflicting student demands and any, for example, resistance from staff or even staff limitations, like on their resources?
I think obviously you don't have all power as a student officer at all. You can only advocate and sort of represent the students. If it goes against sort of resources and there is no way of doing it, then obviously you do have to respect that, but try and compromise on a solution that does help at least a little bit.
So with only 4 minutes left of this debate, I think if we could share our closing remarks. So Tash, would you like to go first?
So I think I've made it pretty clear in this sort of debate and through my manifesto that I want to represent the students. I listened to the students when I formed my manifesto points, and I have quite a broad range of policies that sort of cover every sort of aspect of student life. So trust in Tash for community officer.
Dinishta?
I'm here for the students and I'm here to amplify your voices. I will listen to what student needs are and represent you. Stand firm but also be balanced in my approach so that the university, the SU and the students are all heard and we can come out with an outcome that represents students well. I think I've shown that I have a lot of experience in the SU and I understand the structures that are already in place, the work that has been done in the past, and I know I have a lot to learn and I'm ready to do that. I think that it's, I've shown that I have this experience, I understand the structures, and I have good relationships with different parts of the SU and the university. So vote Dinishta for community officer for empowering, ethical, inclusive representation.
So that is bringing us to the close of the community officer debate. Can we just have a round of applause for both of them? Don't forget to vote next week.